Hello everyone! I decided to touch on a little-known topic from the Star Wars universe, so in this video I will talk about several types of armor that have been improved with the help of technology. If you like what I do, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the channel, or support the channel with a donation on Patreon. All the links will be in the description. So, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the words power armor? I'm pretty sure you immediately thought of the Space Marines from the Warhammer 40,000 universe, exuding tons of pathos, or the Paladins of the Brotherhood of Steel from the Fallout universe. And that's not surprising, since power armor is one of the symbols of these universes like the Jedi and Sith in Star Wars. However, power armor is not only found in Warhammer or Fallout, in fact it was invented much earlier. The first combat exoskeleton with strong armor appeared in 1959 in the cult novel Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein. The Space Marines in this novel used power armor to run, jump high with built-in rocket engines, and use a variety of built-in and external weapons and equipment. Unfortunately, in the 1997 film adaptation, the Marines were dressed in cardboard armor suits. The creators of Warhammer were also inspired by Heinlein's work, which they never hid. Power armor appeared in Star Wars at the same time in the second half of the 1980s. Unlike Warhammer and Fallout, few people know about power armor in Star Wars. Although, how could it not exist in a universe where there are various droids with advanced servo drives and artificial muscles, where there are exoskeletons and high-tech prostheses, and where compact and powerful batteries have been invented to supply all this with energy? I will begin my discussion of this topic with armored rarities. The highly talented engineer Galak Fiar created his own power armor. It was his own idea. It is unknown what material his armor was made of, but it is known that this armor was impossible to penetrate with any type of small arms or grenade launchers. In addition, the power armor was equipped with a protective field generator. However, its weaponry was modest, a double-barreled blaster built into the right arm and a power claw in the left arm. Due to its heavy weight, Galak could not run, although he did not need to. In the prototype of his power armor, Galak Fiar attempted to kill the Jedi Kyle Katarn, who was doing whatever he wanted on his ship. But the Jedi defeated the Admiral, cutting him down with his lightsaber. But this was not the first time Kyle Katarn had to face an opponent in power armor, and one with such a high officer rank at that. Many years earlier, the Jedi had fought General Rom Moat, who was also clad in unique power armor. You are probably familiar with the Dark Trooper project. The main goal of this project was to create a new generation of combat droids to partially replace stormtroopers and soldiers of the Imperial Army in the most dangerous combat situations. But as part of this project, power armor was also created. Armor based on a combat droid. The Emperor appointed Rom Mosi, a veteran of the Clone Wars who is well acquainted with both droids and cybernetic implants and prosthetics, to lead the project. His first project was called Dark Soldier, Phase 0. It involved transforming seriously wounded and sick old clones into cyborgs. Sometimes, if a soldier's injuries were particularly severe, cybernetic implants could make up to 70% of the clone's body. The project was unsuccessful. Rom Mos, already a general, proposed to the Emperor a project to create a new generation of combat droids as well as a variant of power armor. The project was approved. Funding, research facilities, ships, and other resources were allocated. Among other things, MoHC was given possession of a unique ship, the Arc Hammer. It was a flying laboratory and factory. A total of 3 generations of Dark Troopers were created. Phase 1 was a very fast and agile light-class droid armed mainly with melee weapons. They were used to guard a number of particularly important Imperial facilities and were used to a limited extent in some special operations. Darth Vader borrowed several dozen Phase 1 droids for lightsaber training fights. In the droids used by Vader, the built-in vibro sword was replaced with a full-fledged manipulator arm with a lightsaber. The next production model was Phase 2. This was already a heavy-class droid, almost 3 meters tall. Its armament was appropriate: a heavy blaster cannon, a built-in rocket launcher, or a grenade launcher with an ammunition load of 20 grenades or rockets, or simply a blaster rifle. In addition, the droid could fly, and its frick armor was almost impenetrable to light firearms. During combat testing, several Phase 2 droids destroyed a large and well-fortified Rebel Alliance base on the planet Talay. In addition, a single droid that broke through aboard the MS-80 Amon Calamari cruiser destroyed its entire crew. Vader was very pleased with the field tests and immediately ordered mass production to begin. But Moti was not going to stop there. More about Phase 3. It was not just a droid. It was a full-fledged power armor with artificial intelligence. Phase 3 droids had the greatest firepower and thickest armor of any created as part of the Dark Soldier project. Its armor was invulnerable to any handheld or stationary small arms, including even such powerful models as the EWEB turret blaster. Moreover, the armor and built-in deflector allowed the droid to survive a direct hit from an anti-tank grenade, a shot from an anti-personnel or light anti-tank blaster cannon, and a mine explosion without consequence. However, it was not easy to lure Phase 3 onto mines, as it was also capable of flight. In addition to this, the droid had powerful weapons. Moti created power armor that surpassed all models already in service with the Empire. However, the cost was high, 80,000 credits. For comparison, the TIE Fighter cost 60,000. But this genius understood that no artificial brain could replace a human being. That is why Phase 3 was both a droid and power armor. It is not difficult to guess how much the combat capabilities of the elite strike forces of the Imperial Army could have increased if Phase 3 had been adopted. However, the power armor was not tested in the field. Kyle Katarn personally stopped the project, disposing of Moti himself in Phase 3 power armor. But these were unique experimental models. Now I will tell you about the mass-produced products. But let's start from afar. The first mass-produced samples of power armor, later used by the Empire, appeared during the Clone Wars. They were tested in combat conditions by the famous Galactic Marines. These were elite soldiers of the 21st Nova Corps, 4th Sector Army of the Grand Army of the Republic. The Corps was commanded by the respected Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi. They were masters of landing operations well known throughout the galaxy. The command valued the Galactic Marines, and their appearance on the battlefield caused panic among any soldier of the Separatist army. When boarding starships, the Galactic Marines not only entered through docking ports and hangars, but also landed in spacesuits on the hull of the ship, after which they broke through the hull with explosive charges and laser cutters, or entered through technical hatches. In the battle for New Bornalex, the troopers used experimental power armor. The new clone armor significantly increased the soldiers' physical strength, allowed them to fly in space at a decent speed, and had built-in weapons. The experimental armor did not fare well in combat testing. During the battle, the built-in weapons of most of the spacesuits malfunctioned, but the clones attacked the droids in hand-to-hand combat. Thanks to servo drives that increased the soldiers' physical strength several times over, the clones punched through the hulls of the B-2 droids with their fists, and the B-1 droids were no match for them. The result of the battle for New Bornalex, the clones were satisfied, losses were minimal, and the power armor was sent for refinement. The refined versions were already used by the Galactic Empire. Moreover, the Imperial budget was sufficient to establish large-scale production of armored spacesuits in a short period of time. In the early years, no less than 100,000 sets of power armor were produced. Then the second generation appeared, but more on that later. Now let's return to the Clone Wars, as the clones of the Grand Army of the Republic wore another version of power armor. At the very beginning of the Clone Wars, it was believed that artillery, orbital strikes, and missile and bomb strikes from the air would be sufficient to break through well-fortified enemy defenses. After that, the infantry, supported by repulsor tanks and walkers, would be able to finish off the weakened enemy. But tanks could not be used everywhere, and artillery could not always be used everywhere. To break through the defenses, soldiers in very strong armor were needed, because soldiers in ordinary light armor suffered unreasonably high losses. That's how blaze troopers came into being. These Star Wars stormtroopers defeated the forces of the Confederacy of Independent Systems alongside Galactic Marines on Ren-Var, then distinguished themselves on Megiddo and destroyed Separatist defense nodes on Utapau. Then, several of these fighters were sent to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant to greet the arriving Jedi with flamethrowers and other weapons. They could also wield heavier weapons, up to automatic grenade launchers or mounted blasters. Blaze Trooper armor provided excellent protection against small arms fire and shrapnel. In addition, like most types of power armor in Star Wars, it allowed the wearer to fly short distances. However, repulsors were usually used for flight, while Blaze Trooper armor used a pair of jet engines. Now, let's return to the Galactic Empire. By order of Emperor Palpatine, a new elite branch of the military was created as part of the Stormtrooper Corps, the Space Troopers. Only the best soldiers were selected for this unit. At first, they were clones, and later, ordinary humans. In terms of combat and ideological training, the Space Troopers were second only to the Guard and the Assault Commandos. Space Troopers used various types of protective equipment. Sometimes it was ordinary stormtrooper armor, supplemented with a pair of tanks and small engines for flying in open space, and boots equipped with magnetic grips. But more often, Space Troopers were associated with power armor. There were also several types of power armor. At first, Imperial Space Troopers used the perfected power armor of the clones, which had been so successfully tested by the soldiers of the 21st Corps in the battle for New Bornalex. Then came an improved version. In it, soldiers not only possessed enormous physical strength but could also fly in space at high speeds. At the same time, the power armor did not restrict movement. And then a heavy version of the armor appeared, which became a true symbol of this type of troops. This power armor was impossible to penetrate with light and heavy blasters and firearms, and it easily withstood shrapnel from hand grenades. The armor could be worn in extremely low and high temperatures. And thanks to its airtightness, the soldier did not have to fear the enemy's use of chemical, radiation, and bacteriological weapons. The main weapon was a light blaster cannon. In addition, there was a grenade launcher with an effective firing range of 200 meters and an ammunition supply of 30 high-explosive, fragmentation, gas, or stun grenades. In addition, a proton mini-torpedo launcher could be installed, which could shoot down a fighter or make a hole in an armored door. And on top of everything else, the power armor had a built-in laser cutter for cutting holes in the hull of enemy ships. The same cutter was used by Space Troopers as a melee weapon. It was not a lightsaber, of course, but it could certainly make a hole in the enemy. The Space Troopers' power armor was designed to be used in conjunction with standard assault armor. This was done for a reason. There was a possibility that during boarding, the spacesuit could be damaged or the soldier would have to abandon it. Without a standard set of assault armor, a soldier could die from suffocation or freezing in the depressurized compartment of an enemy ship. And even if the power armor was disabled, the soldier would not be left defenseless. Of course, it was possible to work in a spacesuit without assault armor, but it was not the best idea. The armor was powered by 4 repulsors. The main ones were located in a block behind the back, and 2 were in the feet. The latter also served as maneuvering engines. Although the power armor was designed for use in space, it could also fly in the atmosphere, albeit not for long. This allowed Space Troopers to occasionally be used as paratroopers. It was difficult to run in this armor. Therefore, whenever possible, Space Troopers preferred to move using repulsors. The built-in life support system had a 10-hour oxygen supply. The battery supply was sufficient for 4 hours of continuous operation. The legs of the armor had a built-in medical injector. The power armor's mini first aid kit contained stimulants, painkillers, and antiseptics. If a soldier suffered a minor or serious injury, panicked, or was concussed, the system assessed his condition and gave the command to inject a particular drug into the soldier's bloodstream. If the assault soldier was seriously wounded and lost consciousness, the automatic system could sustain life in the soldier's wounded body until the arrival of medics. The visors and external surveillance cameras of the power armor had built-in night vision devices. They were supplemented by 2 lights installed on either side of the head. The armor was created by Dr. Nashiak Lalik. It was called Sander 9. Dr. Lalik was a leading expert in the creation of various types of protective equipment. In particular, he created the armor for such elite units as assault commandos and rad troopers. Nashiak Lalik's younger sister Saren, who served in intelligence, believed that her brother could be persuaded to create power armor for the Rebel Alliance and, later, for the New Republic. Even without her brother's help, New Republic soldiers sometimes appeared on the battlefield in power armor. Naturally, it was not manufactured by the Empire. Shortly before the Battle of Endor, an improved version of the Space Troopers' power armor appeared. The first and second models were used by the Shard Space Troopers throughout the Galactic Civil War. The New Republic was fortunate that power armor and its operation were expensive, and the Shard had few soldiers trained to wear power armor. Earlier, I mentioned that Space Troopers in their power armor could participate in battles on the planet's surface, but it was like hammering nails with a microscope. In other words, it was not their intended use. In addition, the Empire had its own version of power armor for planetary operations. It was worn by hazard troopers. This is a type of heavy infantry designed for combat in areas contaminated with chemical weapons, high radiation, and acid rain. In general, these soldiers fought where ordinary people would not survive long. Hazard troopers were similar to Warhammer Space Marines in that they too underwent modifications to wear power armor. They underwent gene therapy and their limbs were often replaced with mechanical counterparts. The Adeptus Mechanicus would have been pleased. Everything imaginable was built into these soldiers' power armor. A system for diagnosing the soldier's condition, a set of chemicals to cleanse the body of any infection, drugs to close wounds, all kinds of targeting systems in the helmet, and so on. A soldier in this armor could stay in almost any contaminated environment in open space or at great depths underwater for up to 3 days. The only thing you couldn't do in this armor was run. You encountered the Hazard troopers in the game Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy on the planet June. There, they walked under acid rain and tried to kill our hero, Jaden Core. I thought I could fit everything into one video, but there is so much material about power armor in Star Wars that I will have to split the video into 2 parts. I try to avoid some minor details as much as possible so that the video doesn't turn into a long lecture. Well, that's all for today. Thank you all for watching the video to the end. Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, or support the channel on Patreon. All links are in the description. Bye everyone!